Hi, my name's Ryan Jamboretz. I'm the International Managing Director for Videology.
And hi, I'm Paul Gage. I'm the Regional Planning Director for Iris, a creative agency based, the APAC Regional Director based in Singapore.
I think it's fair to say that, Paul, you work in a creative end of the industry and I work on a very mathematic, business-driven end of the business.
Absolutely, yes. So, but I think we were discussing earlier, we actually have the reverse careers, because I actually started in data and started in numbers and maths, and actually migrated into the world of creativity.
And clearly started in London and ended up here, and I started in China and ended up in London.
Exactly, so there's sort of mirror careers going on.
My only question for Paul, being a more creative person, is where are your chunky black glasses and your black suit?
I've got my chunky red glasses on the table. Red glasses are actually in, so I think Matt is still stuck in the 80s, Matt Godfrey.
Very much so. Very much so. I mean, one of the questions I have to ask is just more about, as the creative businesses evolve and planning as a function. I mean, getting to know consumers, consumer insights. How do you do that from an intellectual standpoint, and what role does technology play in that, if at all?
Well, I think technology's really been a great enabler, to be honest. I mean, in the old days of research, actually setting up research, trying to understand consumers was quite forced. It was getting people in a room, it was doing focus groups, it was very difficult to do genuine insight. Now, you're able to use technology as a way of quite passively collecting information, both behavioural information, but also attitudinal as well. So at the moment, literally in the last few weeks, we've been doing a big global study where people, kids and mums, using mobile phones to give us information about what they're doing on the go, how they're thinking, how they're feeling. And so we're collecting lots and lots of information, lots and lots of data that from a planning perspective, would never have been able to get anything that rich 10 years ago.
Very interesting. So are you no longer asking them direct questions and you're collecting data and interpreting more than going in consumer focus groups, going in and asking people questions?
Yeah, we're still asking questions. So there's a few sort of moderated questions going in along the way. But effectively what we're letting them do is live their lives. And I guess from a research perspective, the more people actually live their lives naturally, the more likely you are to find something interesting. When they're in a forced environment, they tend to tell you what they think you want to hear rather than what the real life is. So we can still do some provocations and say, hey, so you just connected with somebody on Facebook to go to a party, so what does that mean? Is that something you do every week, or do you sometimes do things differently? Do you always do parties in connected via Facebook? Just sort of asking those sort of questions. So.
How do those learnings kind of manifest themselves in terms of what you guys are producing? Right? In my world, learnings, data drives automated response and changes that are automated and adaptive. In your world, it's affecting the creative message. It's affecting what's coming out. How does that work? How does that, what is the time cycle on which that evolution happens?
To be fair, it will depend on the clients and how progressive they are. There's still a number of clients who are locked into annual planning cycles, which tends to be necessarily more top-line views. Yeah. But some of our clients are now much more thinking about what we're going to do next week. How do we react to a campaign? How do we iterate what we're doing so we're more responsive? And so that means that the planning and the insight function is no longer just something that happens at the start of a campaign. It's something that actually happens all the way through. So we've got a campaign launching in a couple of weeks with a big beer brand, and I've no idea what's going to happen in terms of how consumers are going to respond to it, but a big part of the campaign is actually Heineken. Oh, there you go, Heineken. Actually responding to how people are interacting with the campaign. And that's primarily video content. So a lot of branded content that's going to be put out and seeded into different places. So.
Very cool, very cool. It's an interesting perspective, just given where I come from and our company comes from. It's kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, which is, in many ways, dehumanizing things. Looking at ways that you can look at observations and find ways to kind of learn from people without even asking some of those direct questions, learning what people's preferences, responses are, how they react to one ad versus another, and using that and taking advantage of that going forward so that a brand's message is more effective, reaches more people without less, the amount of waste that historical media is given to. But that insight and that kind of, the origin of the idea and the kind of the human idea that you guys are drawing out is really interesting, because it's something oftentimes I think the people on my side of the industry even lose perspective of. They think it can all be automated, and I think the guys who do it really well, I think Google's a good example, and a lot of other companies are companies that really actually look and say, hey, how do I kind of marry up those two things?
Yeah. And I think you have to take the data, definitely, but sometimes you have to have a bit of a leap of faith. So creatively, this seems like an interesting idea. Do we have the data to support it? Not always.
Yeah.
Does it gut feel right because we've chatted to some people and it feels like something that might catch fire? Then yes. I mean, recently we did a a campaign with Adidas where we basically use social media to say, we've got a bunch of footballers coming down to London to launch a new boot. What should we do with them? And then ask the fans, and they put in a load of ideas, and then that got voted and filtered and stuff like that. And then what was actually the winner then became an event.
Very cool.
Which for a company to be that brave to say, we don't know what we're going to do, we don't know what it's going to look like, how it's going to feel. For the agents of the footballers, they're like, what's happening? We don't know.
Yeah.
But actually to say, you know what, we need to be much more in tune with what people want, and they're able to tell us now in a much more direct way through the likes of social media or whatever.
Yeah.
So the idea was effectively co-created, collaborated through the audiences.
Sounds like a client with a lot of trust in you guys is also a key
Yeah.
component to making something like that happen.
Yeah, and I suppose Adidas is a brand where they have a lot of brand love anyway, so I probably wouldn't recommend that for a detergent brand quite in the same way. But it's fantastic to be able to change the process, and I think from a creative agency perspective, that has been the hardest for most creative agencies, who are still used to going away with a brief, locking themselves in a room for however long, and coming up with a big idea. And now to say, you know what, we can come up with an idea with a bunch of other people, and it's a very different process. You need different types of people. I mean, the big trend in the last few years has been getting creative technologists into creative agencies. So people who are just coming up and saying, hey, this is a cool technology, this is something that's different. And you kind of, as a planner, you have to look at it and go, all right, technology's cool, how could that interrelate with people's lives, and how can we do something interesting with that?
How much are you guys embracing the big idea thing? How much are you guys embracing and kind of translating that into more than just the 60-second TV ad that goes to Cannes? How much has that changed?
I think agency-wide, TV is still dominating. My agency, Iris, we've never been a TV agency, so we've always been more in the world of activation and digital and experiential, actually. So it's been easier for us to sort of think of things in here's an idea that can pop up here, here's an idea that can pop up there. And I think one of the talks earlier said it's less about your logo, it's more about your values. And actually taking the values of a brand and saying, okay, well, those values can be retranslated a number of different ways. And that might mean that one event happens here, and then one social media activation happens over there, and then maybe, yes, some advertising happens over there. Does it all have to look the same? Does it all have to be the one big idea with the one big strapline? No, it doesn't. And actually, consumers don't necessarily expect that. And in some cases, might actually get bored of it.
Gotcha.